Hello, and welcome everyone to today's webinar, Navigating Manufacturing Challenges in 2025, Strategies for a Resilient Future. We are thrilled to have you with us today for an insightful session. Before we start, let's go over a few housekeeping notes. First, this webinar is being recorded and will be available later on for viewing. Also, please keep your questions to the end of the session and submit them in the Q&A box. We'll be happy to address them then. And now, let's introduce our panel. Today, we have Jennifer Stango, Vice President of Strategic Growth here at Argonaut. Let me quickly share some of her background. She has 20 plus years driving digital transformation and go-to-market strategies. She has deep experience in aligning technology investments with business outcomes. She's also an advisor to C-level executives across manufacturing, retail, and life sciences. She's also very passionate about helping companies future-proof through strategic planning and process improvements. We also have Scott Gardner, Delivery Director here at Argonaut. Here's a quick look at his experience. He also has 20 plus years in manufacturing, operations, and technology consulting. He was also a former business owner in the industrial manufacturing space, so he's lived through the challenges we'll be talking about today. He specializes in ERP, process improvement, and system integrations, and he's very focused on helping manufacturers streamline operations and scale through smart tech adoption. And now, let me hand over the floor to Jen.
Thanks, Ola. Today, we're going to look at the critical disruptions shaping 2025. Global volatility, supply chain resilience, workforce transformation, ESG compliance, and the rise of data-driven smart factories. Scott, do you want to add?
Yes, also we'll be sharing lessons from manufacturers already responding to these pressures with future-ready strategies and offering actionable recommendations so that you can take back to your own organizations and begin implementing those.
Perfect. So let's kick off with some high-level trends that are redefining the manufacturing landscape in 2025. Scott, do you want to add any color commentary?
Sure. We're seeing some global economic shifts like new trade tariffs, surging nearshoring, and industrial pivots, similar to like Germany shifting from the automotive industry to defense. These movements create both disruption and opportunity. So let's dive right into it.
Great. So what I think we're seeing is manufacturers in 2025 are navigating a really complex landscape marked by economic shifts, technological advancements, and evolving regulatory demands. Embracing things like smart manufacturing, enhancing the supply chain resilience, adopting sustainable practices, and leveraging data-driven decision-making as pivotal strategies for building a resilient future in manufacturing. And with that, I think we're going to dive into the 5 key trends that are shaping the industry in 2025 and how they're already impacting strategic decisions that companies are making. So in today's global environment, manufacturers must fundamentally rethink their strategies. Between things like escalating trade wars, rising logistics costs, and economic instability, flexibility is no longer an option. It's absolutely foundational to resilience, right, Scott?
That's right, Jen. One of the biggest risks that we're seeing is over-reliance on single-source suppliers. Add in just-in-time manufacturing vulnerabilities and skyrocketing logistic expenses. It's clear that companies need to build both agility and intelligence to navigate the global landscape that we face today.
Yeah, and I think that the policy changes are really accelerating that urgency. Take the recent trade measures. We're now seeing tariffs on imports from Canada and Mexico, and also on goods from China. These shifts are really hitting the industry like automotive, especially hard given the news yesterday, where complex global supply chains really are the norm for them.
Yeah, in response, many companies are turning to nearshoring, bringing production closer to home, reducing exposure to geopolitical disruptions, which is fueling a surge in demand for domestic manufacturing talent. Estimates right now in the U.S. are showing that we're going to need 3.8 million new manufacturing workers over the next decade.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned it earlier, but I think we're seeing an interesting pivot in places like Germany. Traditionally known for building automotive, right? Manufacturers are now repurposing those facilities to provide defense-related goods. It seems like it's a strategic move to revitalize underperforming sectors and align with national priorities.
Yeah, these examples make one thing clear, John. global markets are shifting and no longer future considerations. They're here, and manufacturers need strategies to allow them to adapt fast and to stay competitive.
Yeah, and I think with that, Scott, what we're really seeing is a shift from reactive to predictive supply chains. Visibility and transparency are really the key to resilience in manufacturing or supply chain. I think we're also seeing a major shift in that supply chain strategy, moving from reactive firefighting to predictive proactive planning. In this new environment, visibility and transparency are no longer nice to haves. They're really essential for resilience.
Yeah, absolutely, Jennifer. Manufacturers are leading the way. Those investing in AI and advanced analytics, they're using these tools to optimize sourcing, forecasting tariffs, streamlining inventory decisions, and even running cost-benefit scenarios to determine whether it's more efficient to warehouse domestically or pay the import duties.
Yeah, and I think all of that matters even more than ever because of the increasing complexity in the global supply chain.
Right. So let's break this down. First, global dependencies and geopolitical risks are exposing manufacturers to the real threats, from trade wars to regional conflicts. These disruptive sources come from countries that we've relied on for decades.
And that makes supplier diversification it's not a strategy anymore, but really a survival tactic, right, Scott?
Exactly. It's not always easy, especially when you're dealing with specialized materials or components. Relying on single source suppliers can create a huge vulnerability that suppliers experience delays or failure altogether.
Yeah, and I also think that while just-in-time manufacturing has been a long favorite cost-cutting exercise that companies do, it's not really a liability when disruptions strike.
Exactly. That's just reality that we live in today. JIT helps reduce inventory overhead, but it also leaves companies exposed. One delay from whether the port shutdown, natural disaster, or conflict can bring production to a halt, which causes stockouts and damages customer relationships.
And not to mention, I think we're seeing rising transportation and logistics costs.
Yeah, which have become a huge burden. Fuel price volatility, shipping rate hikes, and port congestion are driving costs through the roof. Plus, events like the pandemic that we've had or severe weather only amplify these delays.
And I think when you combine all of that with the limited supply chain visibility, it's a recipe for missed opportunities and poor risk management, right?
Exactly. Without real-time visibility, a company can't track shipments, manage their inventory, or respond quickly to disruptions. It also makes it harder to meet sustainability goals, which those are increasing as a priority for our regulators and also our customers too.
Yeah, so I guess the key takeaway here is predictive capabilities, smarter tools, and supply chain transparency are the new baseline. Without them, manufacturers really are flying blind.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about the one. Let's talk about the one most critical and offer and often underestimated, which is the elements of transformation of the workforce. So manufacturers are increasingly adopting sophisticated digital tools and automation to help streamline their operations, boost productivity, and also reduce reliance on manual labor. These tools free up employees so they can focus on higher value strategic initiatives. But digital transformation just isn't about technology. It's about the people actually using that technology. So as these new tools and platforms are introduced, the employees need to support and training of their organization to help develop skills and adopt new ways of working. And while there's concerns about AI replacing jobs, in reality, AI is expecting to create millions of new roles from AI specialists to data analytics to digital transformation leaders.
I think that's a great point. And it's not just a theory anymore. I think recently I just worked with a manufacturing client where their entire supply chain transformation hinged on their workforce alignment. A huge part of their success came from like rethinking their organization structure, redefining roles, and investing in skills needed for a more digital, agile supply chain. So I think one of the other things that we're seeing as an important theme is manufacturers right now are reconfiguring their global supply chains. They're moving away from traditional centralized models and reevaluating their networks with resilience in mind. Thoughts on that, Scott?
Yeah, exactly, Jen. The goal is no longer just efficiency, it's agility and responsiveness. So again, recent disruptions have exposed serious vulnerabilities, and companies are now taking proactive steps to mitigate those risks and vulnerabilities.
Yeah, and I think one of the major things that are going on is the shift towards decentralized manufacturing by distributing production across multiple sites. Manufacturers can minimize their business disruptions, respond faster to demand shifts, and better insulate themselves from the geopolitical volatility.
Yeah, which also goes hand in hand with supply chain diversification. Over reliance on any one region, whether it be China, Mexico, or Eastern Europe, can create some significant risk. So leading companies are developing multi-source strategies, and then they're spreading sourcing across multiple geographies, basically to ensure continuity within their organization.
Yeah, and regional diversification isn't just about the raw materials or finished goods anymore. It's about building that stronger, more localized supplier relationships that can reduce lead times and exposure to trade restrictions or sanctions.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the most exciting enablers that are here today is digital twin technology. With digital twins, companies can visualize the entire supply chain in real time, use predictive analytics to anticipate disruptions, actually run simulations to test different scenarios, and then make dynamic adjustments to not only their inventory, but production and logistics.
Yeah, and I think that's what smart, resilient supply chains are going to look like in 2025. They're responsive, distributed, and digitally enabled. It's not just reacting to what's happening, it's anticipating what's going to happen next. Um, so I know one of the biggest growth areas in manufacturing is really the smart rise of the smart factory. The adoption of smart factory technologies is accelerating at an incredible pace. In fact, the global smart factory is projected to grow from 82 billion in 2024, and yes, that's B, not a M billion, to nearly 90 billion in 2025. That's an annual compound growth of over 9%.
Yeah, that growth being driven by investments within AI technology, IoT, automation, and then analytics, which are all aimed at making production faster, more reliable, more flexible, and more efficient. But with all the innovation and the workforce needs to evolve alongside the technology too.
Yeah, I think that's right, Scott. And we're seeing that transformation play out globally. Look at China as an example. They deployed over 276 industrial robots. They were installed last year. That's a massive shift. And it's not just about the machines taking over tasks, it's about how we retrain and adapt the workforce to collaborate with all of these new technologies.
So there's actually a challenge and an opportunity, basically to upskill employees, not just to replace them. So smart factories aren't going to run themselves. They're going to need people who can operate, maintain, and optimize these systems, which means investing just as much in the people that are on the floor as much as the platforms that are being put on the floor.
And I think that that's a good shift, Scott, because as industrial demand continues to surge, the pressure on the labor market is only really intensified. I think as of October 24, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, there's over 450,000 manufacturing jobs sitting unfulfilled in the United States.
Yeah, and it's not just a numbers problem either. It's also a skills gap. So there's a significant divide between experience of the older generation and the digital first generation expectations of younger workers.
Yeah, and I think that generational shift is really creating a challenge. While the younger workforce is more tech savvy, they really don't have the hands-on experience of being on the shop floor or being in manufacturing. Meanwhile, the older generation brings that operational experience, but they really need to support adapting to those new digital tools and automation.
Yeah, and bridging the gap is going to be key. So companies need to invest in things like mentorship programs, cross training, and digital upskilling. So one of the things that keeps the operations running, they'll stay competitive within the marketplace, and they'll prepare for 2025 and beyond.
So I think we should shift gears and talk about workforce development. because solving the labor shortage isn't just about hiring more people, it's about creating long-term strategies that can develop and retain their talent.
One of the biggest opportunities we see using technology adaptation as a training catalyst. So, for example, AI, robotics are becoming more common in the factory floor. So there's a real chance to engage employees, especially at the entry level, with training programs that can help build valuable new skills within those people.
And I think beyond just the technical training, companies really can bridge the skill gap by creating structured workforce development programs. For example, having those tenured employees mentor and upskill lower skilled workers, and that can create a space to onboard new talent and build institutional knowledge.
It also builds a loyalty, promoting long-term employees who know the business inside and out. It improves retention, and it also reinforces growth within the organization.
Yeah, and I think one thing is culture is really key. To really respond to labor shortages and skill gaps, manufacturers need to prioritize employee satisfaction. I think that means creating workplaces that value people, promote work-life balances, and in some cases offer that flexible or hybrid model that make roles more desirable.
Yeah, and some of the smartest companies are backing those decisions with data. So through data-driven workforce planning, manufacturers can get a clear picture of what the current skill sets are, what future skill sets requirements they're going to need, gaps within the capabilities across the different teams within the organization, where the training is needed, and even long-term success planning.
Yeah, I think at Argano, we've worked with several clients who are actually going a step further. They're forming partnerships with tech schools, colleges, and even high schools to create pipelines of skilled workers that are trained in real world manufacturing environments. Thoughts on that, Scott?
So it's actually a win-win. So students gain hands-on experience, and companies get future-ready workforce. They already understand what the tools and technologies that are being used within the organization.
I think those are all good points. And I also think as manufacturers work to stay competitive, ESG and sustainability are no longer optional. They're fast becoming business imperatives. I think we're seeing an increased focus on sustainable manufacturing, not just from a regulatory standpoint, but also from customers, investors, and those employees that we've been talking about who are prioritizing eco-conscious companies.
Right, exactly. Companies are shifting towards more eco-friendly practices, rethinking materials, optimizing production processes, even redesigning packaging. So sustainability is becoming a part of the DNA and how things are made within these organizations.
I think those are all good points, Scott. And I think another major priority is carbon neutrality. Manufacturers are really investing in technologies that reduce waste and improve energy efficiency. And that can be from IoT enabled monitoring systems to AI driven optimization tools.
Exactly. And while these are all investments, often started for compliance reasons, they deliver operational benefits like cost savings, efficiency gains, and actually brand loyalty too. It's a shift from reactive compliance to a proactive sustainability, and manufacturers who embrace the shift are setting themselves up for long-term success.
And I think what we should talk about is where we are now, where we're heading as manufacturers and supply chain. And when it comes to manufacturing technologies, like Industry 4.0 introduced us to smart factories, automation, connected devices. It's all been about digital transformation, leveraging data, IoT, AI, robotics to boost efficiency and productivity. Where do you think we're going now, Scott?
All of those benefits are still critical. And now as we're moving to Industry 5.0, it's shifting focus more from a human-centric approach. So we're seeing technology and people working together in a more integrated fashion, more thoughtful ways. And it's about personalization, sustainability, and actually resilience too, not just speed and scale.
Yeah, exactly, Scott. And I think as powerful as these technologies are, adoption is not really coming easy for companies. On the left hand of the slide, we see the promised increased productivity, efficiency, and customization. But I know there's a but, right, Scott?
Yeah, if you look at the right-hand side of the screen, it shows the real hurdles that we're talking about. Legacy system issues, data silos that block interoperability, cultural resistance. They need some form of structured change management, cybersecurity risk as everything becomes more interconnected within the shop floor, and also the challenge of scaling these technologies across operations while balancing flexibility and standardization.
Yeah, and I don't think we can forget that all of this requires significant investment and a strategic roadmap to do it right. I know you do this for a lot of clients. What do you recommend?
So we always recommend a pilot and scale approach. So what does that mean? Start small, learn fast, and build from momentum while preparing your workforce for the shift and securing your infrastructure also.
Yeah, so I guess what we're saying is whether you're focused on 4.0 efficiency or looking ahead to the 5.0 human technology collaboration, the goal is the same. Everybody's trying to build a modern, resilient, agile operation that's ready for the future. And to your point, pilot and scale, right? Like try to figure out an approach for it. So I know we've talked a lot about the challenges tied to workforce shortages and skill gaps. So let's shift into some practical strategies that manufacturers can use to invest in upskilling their employees and talent development.
Sure, there's four things that we can that we're looking at from successful organizations, but they're doing right now. First, apprenticeship program. Partner with the local colleges, vocational schools, and training centers to bring in fresh talent. Pair those new hires up with mentors or tenured employees, and help transfer that knowledge and accelerate the onboarding process with these new hires.
Yeah, and I think secondly, they can create a culture of knowledge sharing, right? That's where technology plays a really big role. They can use collaboration tools, shared repositories, internal platforms that serve as a single source of truth across their teams. And when knowledge becomes accessible, productivity goes up and silos, which would include data, come down.
Yeah, exactly. The next thing we could do is build multi-channel talent pipelines. That means everything from employee referrals to clearly defined career paths that show employees how they can grow inside the organization. When people see their future, they tend to stay with you and tend to grow with you more.
Yeah, and I think finally, and I know we've discussed this early, is that companies really need to invest in upskilling. It's not just for training for the tools for today, but really preparing the workforce for the technologies of tomorrow. And that's anywhere from AI literacy to automation systems. Continuous learning really needs to be part of a company's culture.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just not about filling the roles. It's about building a workforce that's ready to lead your transformation forward.
Yeah, so Scott, I know we've gone through a lot of slides, so let's do like a little bit of a roundtable discussion. And so let's just start kind of with supply chain and try to bring everything together with a quick recap and talk about some actionable strategies around supply chain transformation. Do you have some thoughts?
Yeah, so we see that supply chain disruptions are far from over. Manufacturers continue to face volatility, whether it's from global conflicts, weather events, shifting trade policies. Trade restrictions and tariffs have driven up costs and increased uncertainty, pushing companies to reassess on how, when, and where they're going to source their materials.
And that's where nearshoring comes into play, right? We're seeing more companies rethink proximity, not just for cost control, but for agility and access to regional labor. It's really a proactive way to reduce exposure while gaining control over their timelines.
Yep, true examples. Supply chain resilience takes more than a location. It requires re-engineering the entire model to be smarter, faster, and more adaptable to whatever disruption comes up next for them.
Yeah, and that takes that includes new thinking, right? So beyond traditional strategies, can you give some people some high level, next level tactics that they can use to future proof their supply chain?
Yeah, here's a few. Scenario planning and simulation modeling. So using digital twins to generate what if scenarios before the disruption happens. Take a look at supplier risk scoring, evaluation of the vendors, not only just on price, but on risk exposure, their financial health, and also compliance. Reverse logistics optimization. So what does that mean? Streamlining returns, recycling, and remanufacturing processes, since those are all part of the circular supply chain now. Control tower models, implementing centralized command centers to monitor supply chain data and performance disruption in real time. And then the last one is cross-functional supply chain teams, integrating sourcing, financing, and operations, breaking down those silos, and to improve agility.
Yeah, and I think all of those strategies may take time to implement, but they give you the visibility, flexibility, and control to lead through uncertainty, right, Scott?
Yeah, exactly. They help transform the supply chain from a cost center into a competitive advantage for your organization now.
Perfect. So I know we've talked a lot about workforce development today, but maybe it's worth diving a little deeper because labor shortages aren't just a short-term issue. They're reshaping how manufacturers think about talent for the next decade. Thoughts on that, Scott?
That's right, Jen. So it's just not about filling roles. It's about reimaging the entire employee experience. A lot of manufacturers now are focusing on employee retention strategies that extend beyond salary. Things like flexible shifts, wellness programs, even transportation support are becoming key differentiators within different organizations now.
Yeah, exactly. I also think we're seeing some manufacturers lean into technology as a workforce enabler. They're using things like cobots and automation, not to replace the workers, right, but to augment them. That takes the pressure off of physically demanding tasks and actually makes roles more attractive and safer.
Yeah, another area that's gaining traction too is cultural alignment. Younger generations are increasingly driven by purpose and values. Companies that can clearly articulate their commitment to sustainability, innovation, and career growth are the ones that are winning the war on retaining talent.
And I think one thing we haven't really touched on yet is the concept of re-onboarding, and that's revisiting how we bring people back into the business, ones that have left, especially after those long absences, or even as roles evolve due to automation. It's not just about orientation anymore; it's about continuously onboarding to keep people aligned and engaged.
Yeah, and let's not overlook internal mobility, helping employees transition into new roles from the floor to quality, from operations into IT. It basically keeps the institutional knowledge within the building. It offers a new career path with existing employees, and there's no need to actually go out externally and look for new talent.
Yeah, so as we think beyond training and pipelines, I think these are some next level strategies that companies can look at is really to use tech to make jobs more human, not less. Treat employee engagement as a business metric, have a KPI or an OKR about it. Create pathways for internal career movement and lateral skill growth. And focus really on purpose and cultural fit, especially for the next generation of talent.
So, in summary, labor shortages aren't going away, but they're pushing the industry to be more thoughtful, more creative, and more people focused than ever before.
Perfect. So I know we've kind of danced around the subject, but I think we need to take a moment to focus on one of the most powerful enablers in manufacturing technology today, and it's really AI, right? It's no longer theoretical. Manufacturers are already seeing real outcomes by using AI to make smarter, faster decisions across their operations, right, Scott?
That's right. One of the most common use cases we're seeing right now is on predictive maintenance. So AI will analyze the data coming off the sensors from the machines, and they can identify early signs of wear or failure, which allows teams to act before breakdowns happens. So this not only minimizes unplanned downtime, but it also reduces maintenance costs and it extends the equipment life too.
And AI is not just about being inside the factory. It's really transforming the entire supply chain. And that's anywhere from forecasting demand to predicting disruptions. AI is helping companies optimize their inventory, reduce waste, improve on time delivery. It's really a big win for cost savings and customer satisfaction.
And actually, let's go a bit deeper too. One of the high impact use cases is AI driven demand and tariff forecasting. So these models analyze historical data, demand patterns, supply lead times, and geopolitical signs to anticipate increased costs like the upcoming tariffs.
Yeah, exactly. So I think if you're sourcing raw materials like steel or even semiconductors, AI can help forecast the likely impact of a new tariff and even recommend proactive purchasing strategies to buy ahead of those cost increases.
Yeah, and it ties to inventory optimization. AI just doesn't track stock levels. It determines ideal safety stack by factoring in supply volatility, lead times, and market conditions. Some manufacturers are even using Monte Carlo simulations to run thousands of scenarios, like what if happens if tariffs go up or shipping's delayed.
And I think we recently saw this on an automotive client. Their AI system recommended increasing semiconductor chip inventory by about 20%. And that was in advance of the expected Chinese tariff hikes. I think that proactive move kept their production running where maybe others had to halt their production.
And in another area where AI shines is cost benefit analysis, especially when you're using weighting and carrying costs versus tariff exposure. AI models can tell you if it's smarter to store extra inventory in a domestic warehouse or continue with JIT type of inventory and absorb those import fees.
Yeah, and I think we saw that in an electronics manufacturer. They found it was cheaper to actually warehouse 3 months of circuit boards in the United States, even though there might have been higher storage costs, than to continue paying the tariff.
And let's not forget supplier diversification. AI can scale global markets in real time to identify alternative suppliers, ones that offer similar quality at a lower tariff impact. We're seeing procurement teams use AI tools to shift to sourcing from, say, for example, China to Vietnam or India, practically overnight.
Yeah, and I know I saw this at a pharmaceutical client. They used AI to reduce their dependency on a single API supplier, and they shipped their volume to another country while maintaining cost and inventory targets.
Yeah, so whether it's forecasting, sourcing, or even decision support, AI can give manufacturers the insight they need, the speed, and also the ability to stay ahead of the game.
And it's not really about replacing that human decision making. It's about augmenting your teams and giving them real time data and intelligent recommendations to move from reactive to proactive. And I know we built some models just to talk to people about.
Yeah, so let's take a look at how AI-driven analysis plays out in the real world. What you're seeing here is a cost-benefit comparison between two common inventory strategies. One, JIT, procurement versus warehouse storage.
Yeah, at first glance at this slide, Scott, like just in time seems like it's a more efficient option. After all, it's going to reduce the holding costs and keep inventory lean. But I think when you start factoring variables like tariffs, lead time volatility, and supplier risk, the numbers are going to tell you a different story, right?
Right. So in this case that we're looking at, AI helped a global electronics manufacturer model both scenarios. It accounted for tariff increases, shipment delays, and holding costs, and determined the storing inventory domestically would actually save $20,000 compared to sticking with their JIT model.
Yeah, and I think this is exactly where AI becomes a strategic enabler for businesses. It looks beyond those static assumptions and instead evaluates live dynamic inputs like the tariff fluctuations, fuel prices, supplier performance, and it's going to guide you to smarter procurement decisions.
Yeah, the takeaway here is that decisions that once felt purely operational are now becoming data-driven trade-offs. AI empowers you to compare cost, risk, and resilience in the ways that weren't possible before.
Yeah, and I think that shift takes you from gut instinct to an algorithm-backed strategy. It's what's going to give manufacturers a competitive edge in this constantly shifting environment we're living in right now. I know we have another example in building on the previous, the chart that we're currently showing is how AI is helping companies rethink where to source from. And it's not just based off price, but it's based off the tariff impact and overall landed cost.
Exactly. So what you're looking at is a model that compares supplier options across four countries: China, Vietnam, Mexico, and India. While China may offer competitive base pricing, high tariffs in case 25% drive the total cost up significantly.
But by basically using this AI model and it looks at tariff adjusted costs, this manufacturer found that India, despite it has a higher base cost, had the final lowest cost per unit, and it was about 92.40. That's because the tariff rate was only 5%, making it the most financially viable choice when all factors were considered.
Exactly. And this is where AI-enabled sourcing really shines. It doesn't just pull in the lowest price. It layers it in real time, on tariffs, transportation costs, lead time, reliability, which basically optimizes sourcing locations then.
And I think, Scott, we're seeing companies actually take this a step further, and they're moving inventory through non-tariff countries like Mexico or India, and I know that might change, as part of a logistics strategy. It's not about just finding new suppliers, but it's also about using global routing and redistribution hubs to maximize tariff exposure.
Yeah, it's a modern approach to supplier diversification. Instead of being locked in to high risk markets, companies can now create agile sourcing networks that adapt to policy shifts, preserve margin in the process.
Yeah, so I think the key takeaway here is what we're saying is just don't react to tariffs. Use AI to plan around them. Try to make supplier decisions that are both cost effective and strategically sound. Um, and I know we have another example of how AI is transforming inventory planning and demand forecasting. What you're seeing in this chart is a comparison between historical sales data and AI forecasted demand over a 6-month window. The AI model identifies trends, seasonal fluctuations, and even external signals to provide a much sharper view of what demand is likely to be. Right, Scott?
Right. In this case, the system is focused on total demand of 11,500 units. I figure that's based not only on past sales, but dozens of other variables from marketing activity, macroeconomic factors to supply chain volatility and competitive pricing.
And I think this is where AI really is changing the game for people. Instead of relying solely on historical averages or even manual planning in a spreadsheet, teams can now use predictive insights to make data driven decisions. And that would mean ordering the right amount of stock, reducing excess inventory, avoiding stockouts, and even production slowdowns.
Yeah, in addition, it also means aligning procurement, production, and logistics in a more precise manner. With forecasted demand climbing steadily into June, the manufacturer can proactively secure materials, adjust their orders, and prep their labor scheduling all before the demand spike hits.
Yeah, and I think for companies operating in tariff sensitive or capacity constrained environments, having this visibility months in advance is really critical to their business. It gives them the lead time to mitigate costs and supplier risks instead of reacting after it's too late for them.
Yeah, exactly. At the end of the day, this is what AI in manufacturing is all about: getting ahead of the curve with insights that drive smarter decisions and more resilient operations.
Correct. And I know we talked a lot about labor challenges during our conversation earlier. The visual that we're showing now really highlights the root of the issue. It's not just about roles that are unfulfilled. It's that the skills needed for modern manufacturing are evolving faster than most workforces can keep up with.
Yeah, so what you're seeing in this diagram is a skills gap analysis, comparing current workforce capabilities with the skills required to support future automation and digital transformation.
And I think the gaps are really striking to me. If you look at AI and machine learning, companies need proficiency levels around 8 out of 10 to be competitive, but most teams are sitting closer to a 3. And the same holds true for data analytics, automation, cybersecurity, and even cloud computing.
Yeah, even when you look at areas like ERP systems, IoT, smart manufacturing, they're showing meaningful gaps too. This is a critical sign. Even if you're investing in technology, it's not going to deliver results if your people aren't ready and equipped to start using those.
Yeah, and I know we talked about it, but I think this is why upskilling and workforce development need to be part of every transformation plan. It's not just enough to implement your technology. You actually have to close the gap between your workforce's current skills and your future operational needs.
Yeah, so we're working with manufacturers who are proactively addressing this with targeted training tied to real business use cases, cross-skilling programs to develop in-house talent, partnerships with technical schools, universities to create long-term pipelines of talent, and internal learning academies that evolve as tech evolves.
Yeah, because Scott, really at the end of the day, the best automation strategy isn't about the machines. It's really about your people, right? The manufacturers who are willing to close the gaps now will have a major advantage in both agility and innovation in the future. And so I think now maybe we should look at some numbers in this conversation. When we talk about workforce strategy, it's really easy just to focus on the cost. But I think this chart is really showing the full picture. It includes the long-term value of different investment options.
Yeah, as you're looking at this, the cost benefit analysis compares three key strategies: automation investment, training programs, and new hiring. And it looks at the projected ROI over 5 years.
Yeah, it's interesting because it looks like automation requires the highest upfront cost, but as you can see in the visual, it also delivers the greatest savings over time, and that would be about more than 1.4 million in this scenario. That's because as automation scales, it reduces manual errors and really allows existing teams to focus to do more with less.
Yeah, on the other hand, training programs show a strong ROI with lower initial investment. While they don't generate savings as a large automation does, they're essentially closing the skills gap and retaining institutional knowledge, especially paired with, internal mobility efforts within the organization.
Yeah, and then I know some people use a strategy of new hiring, and that really has a moderate cost and moderate return. It may be necessary in some cases, but without the right culture, onboarding, or even career development, it can be one of the most expensive and higher risk approaches over time.
Yeah, and as we talk through this, the takeaway here is there's really no one size fits all solution. The best results often come from a blended approach. So investing in automation for scalability, training for upskilling, and target hiring where strategic gaps exist.
Yeah, and I think that's where companies have to make these decisions with a data-driven mindset. They have to look at both cost, projected value, and they have to be able to build a workforce strategy that's both financially sound and future ready. So I think that's a good segue. I know we've covered a ton today, and that's anywhere from economic pressures, labor shortages, to the role of AI, automation, and workforce transformation.
So while these are all challenges are real, they're also opening the door for something bigger. So the opportunity is how to rethink how we operate, how we invest, and how we grow.
Yeah, and maybe we should shift gears and talk about what it takes not just to react, but to future-proof your organization for long-term success and resilience.
Yeah, that's because companies that thrive in 2020 and beyond, they're not the ones with the most tech or the biggest budgets. There's the ones with the strategy designed to evolve.
Yeah, I know companies are asking like, what strategy should I choose to future-proof my organization? And what you see on this visual is something Scott and I put together. It's what you're looking at is four interconnected paths that successful manufacturers should use to not just survive but thrive. Right, Scott?
Right. So if we look at the first path, there's smart manufacturing path. This is all about driving efficiency through automation and advanced production techniques. So things like digital twins, AI-powered analytics, agile production help reduce waste, improve quality, and increase responsiveness.
Yeah, and then there's the data-driven path, which focuses on continuous optimization. I think this strategy really uses cloud computing, data interoperability, and real-time insights to make smarter, faster decisions across your business, not just on your shop floor.
And then there's the lean resilience path, which is especially important in times of uncertainty. So this approach is built to adapt to economic shifts that focus on inventory optimization, cost efficiency, and risk management, which keeps the ability to keep flexible while protecting your margin.
Yeah, and last but not least, we have the future-proof path. That's really a strategic overlay. It's about your long-term investments in four key areas: technology adoption, workforce adaptability, business enablers like automation and integration. And it's really about also managing those external forces like tariffs, labor shortages, and geopolitics.
Yeah, and if you look at the center of the diagram, all of this is what we call future-proof manufacturing. It's not a one-size-fits-all model. It's about selecting the right mix of strategies based upon your business model, maturity, and the goals of the organization.
Yeah, exactly, Scott. And I know you work with a lot of companies on this, and most of them aren't just choosing one path. They're integrating all four, and they're creating a connected, resilient ecosystem. And that's really what future proofing looks like in action. And as I think as we close out, we really want to leave the audience with something that's actionable, something that can help them take all of these ideas that we've discussed and turn them into real progress. Scott, do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's why we're offering a complimentary 6-hour strategy session designed specifically for manufacturing leaders who are ready to assess their business challenges and to build a future-proof roadmap.
Yeah, and I guess people are probably asking themselves, why does this matter to me right now? And that's because I think as we've been talking about it, this industry is changing and it's changing fast. And manufacturers have to quickly adapt to lead the way, whether it's dealing with those supply chain volatility issues or even adopting AI automation, navigating the ESG pressures that they face, or closing those workforce gaps. This is an opportunity to get ahead. So Scott, what do you normally do? Because I know it's really a working session. It's not just a discussion.
Yeah, exactly. So in the working session, here's what you're going to walk away with: a clear understanding of the key industry trends and market disruptors, a prioritized strategy framework for where to invest and innovate, insight on how to unlock efficiencies through technology and automation. And the last and most important one is a customized action plan with practical steps for your organization.
So just to reiterate, it's really more than a discussion. You meet with Scott and other industry experts, and it's a working session. They really build it around your goals, your maturity levels, and your operating model. Scott, do you want to add?
Yeah, well, once again, it's complimentary, so there's no strings attached. It's a valuable way of helping you and your team prepare for 2025 and beyond.
Yeah, so if you're ready to take the next step, you can click Get Assessment in the orange above. Scott and I would really love to work with you on building your future ready strategy. So I think with that, Ola, we're ready to take any questions if there are any.
For sure. Thank you both, Jen and Scott. This was very interesting, and I hope everyone on the call today got some key actionable items to walk away with. Again, this is your chance to click on that button, Get Assessment, so you can book your strategy session with both Jen and Scott. Looking at the Q&A box, it seems like we've got one question here. The question reads, what's the first step a manufacturer should take to future-proof their supply chain?
So that's a great question. The first step is visibility, and that means assessing your current supply chain from end to end, understanding where your dependencies lie, where your risks are, and what technologies you have to gain real insights from that. From there, you can identify opportunities for diversification, nearshoring, tech adoption like IoT tracking or predictive analytics.
Great. It seems like a second question also came in. The question reads, how should companies prioritize between automation and workforce upskilling?
Yeah, I mean, Ola, I don't really think that's an either or. It's really about building the right mix. Automation can scale your operation and improve efficiency, but it really only works if your people are trained to support, manage, and collaborate with that tech that you're deploying. What Argano recommends is starting with a skills gap analysis to see maybe where you need to upskill internally, and then layer in automation where it complements or even enhances those human capabilities.
Perfect. Thank you, Jen. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to type them in. We do have a couple more minutes left. All right, looks like no more questions have come in. Again, thank you both, Jen and Scott, for today. Very informative. And for everybody on the call, please feel free to take opportunity and click on that Get Assessment button right now. And with that, we'll close off. Thanks again, everyone. Have a wonderful day.